Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jonas Lang. I'm the EVP and a director with Apex Critical Metals, emerging rare earth growth story in the heartland of the US in Nebraska. We trade under the symbols APXC on the CSE, APXCF on the OTCQX, and KL9 here in Germany. We'll be making some forward-looking statements, so please do read this on your own time. So this is a simple story. I've got about 15 minutes today, so these are the 5 items I'd like you to take away, if nothing else. China dominates the rare earth supply today. They've had a near monopoly with 90% control. The US has reacted by dumping $100 billion into the critical mineral space with a real focus on securing their own national security in the rare earth supply. Meanwhile, we've had demand for rare earths surging across defense, advanced manufacturing, technology, and EVs. And what I'll show you today is a project in Nebraska that we believe is very uniquely positioned to become one of the more significant deposits in the United States. We're well structured, $13 million in cash before we embarked on our current drill program, which has a $6 million budget, so fully funded. Those 2 drill rigs are continuing to turn as we speak. And team is always important. We have a capital markets group that has experience bringing in strategic partners, successful M&A transactions, and arguably more important is the technical people behind this deal. Have been in rare earths for 2 decades. There's not a lot of geologists that can say that. I've had big discoveries and takeouts in uranium, lithium, et cetera. So the right team to grow this company. I'm not going to go into the case for rare earths a lot today, just don't have the time. Come by the booth if you'd like to discuss the market dynamics more. But long story short, there is $3 to $5 trillion of US economic activity that depends on rare earths. There's been a lot of struggle with China basically having all the leverage in the world over the United States with their control. The 2 that are most relevant for our story would be MP Materials and USA Rare Earth that you can see on the screen here. The US administration invested $550 million into MP Materials. They hold a 14% equity stake today. They subsequently and more recently invested $300 million US into US Rare Earth, along with a $1.3 billion senior secured note to help support their growth. They're not in production yet, but working to be a full vertical supply chain integrated company. So Apex, this story is relatively new in terms of this flagship project. We spent 1.5 years putting this ground together, but we only went public with that announcement in Q4 of 2025. Since then, we have become a Defense Industrial Base Consortium member. This is a database that gives you access to potential grants and US funding as well. So early days for us in that regard, but again, we're making progress. So if you took time to research rare earth deposits held in publicly traded companies on US soil, your research would start and stop on this single slide. There are 5. There are some others that have a byproduct, a little bit of rare earths as a part of their deposit, but these are the 5 companies that have projects in the US that are rare earth deposits with mineral resources. So MP Materials, the only producer in the country, is a $10 billion US market cap. You can see their grade and scale here. It's a sizable resource with good grade. They are essentially the unicorn or the cream of the crop in the country. Next would be USA Rare Earth. Again, you can see their grade here is 0.06%. It's very marginal. They do have a heavy rare earth component, though, that they are trying to process. Again, with all of that funding, they'll throw a lot of science at trying to figure out getting some heavy rare earths out of that deposit. But their valuation of over $4 billion is, again, largely about magnet manufacturing and downstream integration throughout the supply chain. These other ones, Ucore, more valued on their midstream technological processing. They have a small 0.6% deposit. Rare Element, small deposit, 7-8 million tons, good grade. I'm giving you these numbers so when we get to our results, you have some context. American Rare Earths, again, 0.33%. So there is a lack of high-quality rare earth deposits on US soil, and somebody that comes and delivers that should be heavily rewarded. So really quick history. Our team actually was in this very area in southeast Nebraska about 14 years ago, putting together a big land package that ultimately went into a company called Quantum Rare Earths. That company went on to become NioCorp. NioCorp recently touched $1 billion US valuation. They've defined a niobium, scandium, and titanium resource that they're advancing to development aggressively. They just sunk a mine portal shaft about 2 weeks ago, or started the process. So our team knew this area, and about a year and a half ago, we were searching global carbonatite systems. This is a favorable host for rare earths. There's about 600 carbonatites on the planet. This was one we knew well and knew there was some very tremendous historical rare earth numbers. And so we spent 15 months putting this land package together and announced that in October of last year. So a little bit about Nebraska. It is a Tier 1 jurisdiction, geopolitically stable. One of the biggest benefits for us as an explorer is you're not dealing with Forest Service or BLM or these other US agencies that require bigger permitting. You know, you do even an NOI with the BLM, you design a drill program, you pay a bond. If you want to change where you're drilling a hole, you have to go back and amend your NOI. This is private land. This is deals with corn farmers in Nebraska. They're actually helping us flatten drill pads. So it's a great place to work in terms of exploration and development. I'll move to the next slide here too. This outline shows you the full carbonatite. It's one of the largest globally, about 6 by 8 kilometers wide. You can see in the turquoise blue in the center of this figure, that's NioCorp's ground. Again, trading between a $700 million and a $1 billion valuation. They have received a $10 million grant from the Department of War to fund some drilling. They have $780 million in commitments from the US Export-Import Bank. So this is a company garnering a lot of attention. But Apex is not a closeology play trying to benefit from the neighbor. This is an area that has 2 drill holes, historical, that have globally significant numbers in them. We've spent the last 15 to 18 months assembling a land package that's twice the size of NioCorp's. Moved really quickly, announced this in Q4. We did re-logging, re-assaying, put together a 3D model of this historical data. We got our permitting done in January to drill, had a first rig out by the end of the month, a second rig in early February, and they continue to turn. And again, this is a pretty simple story. Go in, verify that historical mineralization, and expand it as quickly as we can to put a resource on the board in the US that would be second to only Mountain Pass that's in production. So this gives you an idea of the historical mineralization, keeping in mind those grades we saw on the peer group in the United States. So EC93, that's the vertical hole you see on screen, 155 meters of 2.7% rare earth oxide. That included a 55-meter high-grade section of 55 meters at 3.3. Quantum rare earths came in about 30 years later and drilled that angle drill hole you see on screen, about 100-meter step out in terms of where they collared it at the surface. Where these intervals cross would be about 60 meters off the screen towards you. Not only replicated those results, actually bettered it with 236 meters of over 2%, and again, close to 70 meters of 3.3. So these are very significant results, but they're historical. So we've had an effort here of 2 rigs drilling. Just last week, we reported our first intercept. It was 100 meters away from those drill holes we just saw. It still clipped a zone of 82 meters at 2%, including 51 at 2.4. So this is a very significant start to the program. Included 17 samples of over 3%. There was several over 4% as well. And I should say, with only 2 historical data points, part of the effort here is figuring out the orientation, right? We're not going to hit on every single drill hole out here, but we see the scale, the grade, the potential, and believe with an adequate drill program here, we can move quickly to a resource. On the screen here, if you look at the very bottom, you'll see a white call-out box there. That's EC043. That's another drill hole from the 80s vintage. We re-assayed that just recently. That had a big, broad, 130-meter well-mineralized interval. So that's about 700 meters of strike. That's the playground in which we're operating here and testing this system. All of the blue that you see down those traces, those are our drill holes. Those are logged carbonatite. That's the favorable host. Doesn't mean the entire drill hole will run, but we're in the right rock that should produce some good results. The other key here, I don't want to get too technical, but in rare earths, you have 15 rare earths. The most valuable are neodymium and praseodymium in terms of the light rare earths. This is what's used in all the super permanent magnets. So it's always better to have a higher percentage of your rare earth grade as NdPr, neodymium and praseodymium. For context, globally, carbonatites would typically range between 12 and 20%. Mountain Pass, for example, the only producer in the United States, their average is 14 to 16% of their rare earths are NdPr. So we had a surprise in this drill hole. Down at the bottom where you can see the letter B, we hit a zone of 10 meters that averaged 49% NdPr. This would be in a tier of its own globally. I think the highest average of global deposits that I'm aware of is around 30% NdPr ratio. Caveat being this is a single drill hole. We don't know how much scale of this is. It could be a one-off, but we'll drill and try to prove up some more of that valuable rock. So in summary, 2 rigs have been turning since early February. We've drilled 8 completed holes now for just shy of 6,000 meters. 7 of those holes, or just over 5,200 meters, remain assays pending. Based on that successful first drill hole hit and the visuals, quite frankly, the core looks better in holes 4, 5, 6, 7 than anything else we've drilled. So the team has the confidence here to expand that program and scope going forward. In terms of catalysts, we had our first results out last week. Over the coming weeks, you can expect basically every 3 to 4 weeks for us to be putting out 3 or 4 more drill hole results. And really do believe this has an opportunity to emerge as a kind of the US rare earth growth story. Don't have a ton of time, so I'll touch on one of our other projects very quickly. This is called the CAP project. It's in British Columbia. It's a niobium focused project. You can see the black ellipse on the upper part of the slide. We completed 8 or 9 holes last summer. It was kind of a regional program based on some mapping and sampling results. And you see the geophysics here. Unfortunately, we did these geophysics concurrently with the very end of the program. And you don't have to be a scientist or geologist to see the big target here that was not tested in that program. That's a big buried magnetic anomaly, so that's another target to follow up on. But we still did hit an emerging discovery here of niobium, 36 meters of almost 0.6% Mb2O5. For context, there's a lot of other major discoveries out there that started with discovery holes in that 0.5, 0.55 type range. So successful start included 10 meters over 1%. We have a little bit of flow through in the treasury that will be allocated to the follow-up program here this summer. In terms of the team, Sean Charland, our CEO, is with me here. Him and Nathan, our CFO, just recently came off a big win at Alpha Lithium. That was a lithium brine play in Argentina, sold for more than $300 million. A lot of our founding strategic holders that have invested in every round were a part of that win as well. Myself, I've been with Maple Gold, American Pacific, several others, really focused on bringing strategic partners to advanced exploration assets. I was a director, recently joined as an EVP because I see that opportunity here as well. Zane Callion, just recently appointed as a director the other week, CEO of Scorpio Gold. That's an emerging gold company in Nevada with Eric Sprott and Ross Beatty as key shareholders. Technical group, again, perhaps more important. Jody DeRouge has spent a better part of 2.5 decades focused on critical minerals, including rare earths. He's been a part of major uranium discoveries in the Athabasca Basin. More recent one would be PMET Resources, a very large lithium pegmatite discovery, an advanced project in Quebec. Darren Smith works with Jody. He's our expert on processing flow sheet metallurgy, which is really important in the rare earth space. In fact, he worked on the flow sheet for our neighbor NioCorp's feasibility a couple years ago as well. In terms of cap table, 84 million shares out, 110 fully diluted. I mentioned at the start we had $13 million before embarking on this drill program. Still have budget remaining for that first phase of drilling, so fully funded at the moment. In terms of the cap table, management and directors own just shy of 10%. ZIM2, which is essentially a closed-end fund that's also run by our CEO, owns just shy of 10%. And then that founding strategic group owns 23%. As per this chart, I can tell you that's more like 30 today. So again, 50% of these shares are incredibly tightly held. The remaining 50% is largely retail at this point. We have a couple smaller family offices and one institution in the story. I think all of that will change as we start putting out drill results. And I note here at the bottom, we have a NASDAQ application that started in November. Latest comments from council and the NASDAQ put us on track to be listed there likely by right around mid-year. So that should create a lot more liquidity and help make this an institutional grade story once we achieve that. I think my time's basically out. Again, I think I'll just conclude by saying right time, given the dynamics between China and the US today and the need for rare earths domestically. The right team, this is a team that had been in this very area 14 years ago, and a team that's demonstrated they can bring strategic partners and successful M&A outcomes. So again, I think this can become the rare earth growth story in the United States. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, come by booth 5 if you'd like to chat further. Thank you.